We've all heard that it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, but dogs don't really eat dogs, do they? Why not? They're obviously intelligent, they're compassionate, they show love just as obviously as they show pain, and these senses are matched only in their empathy. In fact, studies have shown, let me see who did them, so I forgot to check these. Studies have shown that dogs can read our emotions better than wolves or even chimpanzees, because Canis lupus familiaris has evolved alongside Homo sapiens sapiens. And they already had a sense of how others must feel, because they're communal animals. They use pack strategies to do together what none alone could have done by themselves. And so do we. That's why we bonded with them. And one of the traits we share with them is binocular vision. We've had it since we were just little monkeys. And this gave us better depth perception of the trees, but at the expense of peripheral vision. As early primates had few defenses and a great many enemies, it meant that we had to have others watch our backs. And if we did see trouble coming, we would have to give an audible warning, one that would evoke an immediate response without prior investigation. This is part of where language comes from. There's one group of old world monkeys that has been shown to make a particular sound every time they see a leopard, only when they see a leopard. And that sound is distinct from another sound that they make every time they see a snake, but only when they see a snake. And the response that follows each is completely different too. One sends them up the trees, the other tells them to static. Now, our increased dependence on communication of this sort created a selective pressure for increasing our intelligence, because if you're not paying attention, you tend to get removed from the gene pool. We are now the smartest of all animals, that is true, but before we were all that smart, we were relatively weak compared to everything competing against us or coming after us. The chimpanzees and gorillas probably survived because they're exceptionally strong. But every other lineage, physically and intellectually similar to our own, has since died out such that we are the only line left. So perhaps our ancestors cared about each other a little more generously, and that probably gave us the edge. We often imagine that if we built intelligent robots, or if we ever encountered extraterrestrial aliens, that they would think like we do. Or if they didn't have our emotions, then they would be completely illogical and have no emotions at all. But even if their intellect was otherwise a perfect parallel of the human mind, and even included feral emotions like fear and rage, it would still be unlikely that we would have the human capacity for compassion without a few specific traits that evolved only in our line. Just like dogs and elephants and a lot of other mammals, humans also feel love. And those who argue that love is uniquely human also say that it can't be tested in any objective way, implying that it must be supernatural and all that implies. But we've since discovered that even something as abstract as love has a definite chemical signature. And this applies even in the long-term relationships after the initial lust and attraction have faded. Amazingly, even empathy has now been detected electrochemically. Those of us who follow the TED Talks may have caught neuropsychologist Dr. Ramachandran promoting Indian philosophy in his discussion of what he called Gandhi neurons. They're a subset of motor and sensory neurons that fire when we're watching someone else do something, as if we were doing it ourselves. Now, Dr. Ramachandran suggests that this is a sort of empathy. It enables us to learn by example. We are putting ourselves in someone else's position. And these are particularly located in the prefrontal lobes. Tendencies towards sociopathic aberrations may be physically detectable in this area also. Researchers at USC Irvine have found correlations between the underdeveloped prefrontal lobes and violent or criminal behavior. The implication is that those who lack compassion, those who don't feel pity or remorse or fear, those who will not apologize except under duress, and never sincerely, because they either project or deflect blame and will not admit or accept responsibility for their own mistakes, likely have underdeveloped or physically damaged prefrontal lobes. I imagine all of you are thinking about who fits that description from your personal experience. Of course, certain drugs have also been identified as a catalyst for this and other related cognitive dysfunctions as well. And sadly, those types of drugs tend to be popular with people already of this condition, and this is why we had to have laws and a means to enforce them. For any society to advance, it must necessarily minimize pathological behaviors and usually eliminates or isolates these from the environments they threaten, according to their various systems of social order. Sometimes that means banishing or incarcerating sociopaths, unless they're the ones in charge. Then it might mean having a law mandating the murder of infidels. And we can all see where that society would be in a few generations, especially when those concordant with that rule are also encouraged to procreate. So, out of control. Sadly, that has been a recurrent case in history. Fortunately, though, reasonable, logical rationalism is recurrent too, as if common sense was a cultural atavism. We may see our culture largely divided between iconoclasts branded as radicals and paranoid reactionaries who criticize skepticism and praise gullibility. But the vast majority of the population holds the middle ground and doesn't want to hear from either extreme. I've tried to get my religious friends to watch Pat Robertson or to read Chick tracts, and they just won't do it. They don't want to hear him any more than they want to hear me. But once the masses finally awaken to these sorts of influences in our society, then oppressive societies that are based on prohibition rather than opportunity cannot remain dominant because they have nothing to offer. There's no practical advantage where you do have that with contemplation and compassion and knowledge and perception. Curiosity may have killed a cat, but it made us what we are today. So the default position and natural condition of humanity desires to lean toward love, pity, and charity, which are all dependent on some degree of empathy, which evidently evolved with and is thus integral to socially cooperative animals. Like so many other splendid patterns in nature, these behavior traits are apparently not delivered from the top down. Rather, they've evidently emerged from the bottom up. Cooperation created society, and society determines its laws and norms accordingly. It is obviously to the benefit of all that we not only defend but also promote and encourage our sons and daughters as well as our kinsmen, friends, and fellows. And of course, we must trust in all of them as they must trust in us. It is inherent to our nature that we value each other, and to various degrees we instinctually feel for one another. That's why we can't all be liars and killers and thieves, and that's why most of us don't even want to be. This is how morality evolves in higher animals, because society can't function without it, or society can't function otherwise, and we can't function without it. Thank you.